Tropic Thunder is this week's movie. It is on Paramount Plus, and
when's the last time you had watched it, John? How long had it been?
Quite a while. I honestly couldn't give you a year, but it had definitely been a while.
Yeah,
I hadn't seen it since I was a teenager, young teenager.
I happened to be because I was scanning different shows to watch on Paramount, and I saw it was on there. So, that could be. It's an interesting movie, but then for the conversation, I think it could be a really good movie club selection. So that's what we went with this week. And quick synopsis: it's a spoof. It's a spoof of a couple of different things.
A lot of different stuff. Yeah,
it's a spoof of war movies, but it's also a spoof of Hollywood and just the entire movie making complex.
Apparatus,
yeah, and it is a satirical comedy. Ben Stiller plays this action star who's kind of down on his luck, needs another good part. He's coming off a very questionable movie in his career. He's trying to get recognition for his acting instead of just being the meathead, action star.
Yeah.
You have Robert Downey Jr., who is the classic method actor, gets way too far into his characters. You have Jack Black, who is the coke-addled comedian who does nothing but, flatulence movies. And they're all in this movie that is supposedly about an experience in Vietnam, written by the character played by oh my God, I forgot his name.
Nick Nolte.
Nick Nolte.
Nick Nolte. So it's supposed to be kind of like Platoon, where it's, based on a true story. And they go to shoot this movie. The budget's out of control. They decide to do it guerrilla style. It goes terribly wrong. And that's essentially the synopsis of this movie. But where to start with this one? When you watch it, Kent, is it more, I think I know the answer to this, but is it more a spoof of Hollywood or a spoof of Vietnam movies?
I think it's almost equal, really, because the first, especially that first 25 minutes, 20 minutes is really just a takedown of Hollywood, right? Because it doesn't really have anything. And then once the war becomes real, so to speak, then I think it's of the Vietnam movies. So I kind of almost divide it in two parts, because some of the movie stuff, of course, continues through the second half, but most of the stuff about the Vietnam, the other war movies can't really come into being until they're out in the jungle fighting their war. Let's just put it that way.
Right. And I guess I did fail to mention this. As they're trying to shoot this movie guerrilla style, they run into actual modern day drug dealers who, don't want anyone snooping around their properties or their country. So that's where things get sideways.
With a spoiler alert, spoiler explanation on a 2008 movie.
That's true.
Exactly a secret anymore.
And Kent, that is one of the things, like, I love how, like, so Nick mentioned he saw it when he was a teenager. He hadn't seen it since. I actually watched this movie earlier this year randomly on a Saturday night, and it was the first time that I had seen it, I don't know, since I was in college. And one of the things about it that stood out to me then, and again yesterday when I rewatched it, is how of 2008 it feels in terms of like the Hollywood Access type show. Like, I think that this movie is so funny. I think broadly it's funny, but I think the small sneaky moments of like that Hollywood Access show and what they're talking about with the Ben Stiller character, or what they're talking about with the Robert Downey Jr. character, and what is happening with them, but also then like the TiVo conversation that is happening is this through line with the Matthew McConaughey character. And John didn't even mention that Tom Cruise, one of our biggest stars, is an absolute a-hole of a studio executive who runs this studio. And I think
bald
suit. Yeah,
bald in a fat suit, and the fat hands just
his arms, everything. And then you have Bill Hader, who is so funny in this movie. I think, to answer John's question, I think it's more of a takedown of Hollywood. Like, obviously the very famous scene of Robert Downey Jr. talking to Ben Stiller about playing mentally disabled characters is probably the thing that sticks with this movie or with people the most from it. But he absolutely nails it, because the Ben Stiller character trying to get an actor when he's having the conversation with the drug leader later, he's like, an Oscar, and he goes, "You were nominated? No, to have been nominated would have even been an honor." It's like that part. But then, Robert Downey Jr., undergoing procedure so he can be in blackface because he has to enter the role. Like, I think that it is so biting and it is so freaking funny. And yes. I think, I don't know. I'm sure, Kent, that people, there are probably people who had never seen this that would watch this and be horrified by it. I think that it destroys Hollywood in all of the best ways. And I think that it's actually aged very, very well, because I think it knows what it's doing. I think it knows what it's doing the entire time.
Other than, I took a bunch of strays for this back in the day anyway.
Oh.
For liking a movie that has an excessive use of the R word, shall we say?
Yeah, and that's true, because your wife does work with folks who are in need of that assistance. Yeah,
and I took lots of strays for that one, and that would not age well today.
Sure,
that it is certainly true, but for it to be able to pull off, because you think about it today. Let's say this movie comes out in 2020. The blackface stuff would have been horrifying. But like Josh said,
it knows what it's doing.
It knows what it's doing. They knew what they were doing in the moment, and how it's really a spoof on these method actors who just think they have to be the character that they're playing.
Absolutely.
And so it goes way over the top. But of course, there's the famous scene with him and I had forgotten that the Brandon Jackson character's name was Al Pacino.
Yeah,
but it was a rapper. It was spelled different, but it was pronounced Al Pacino. When he says, what do you mean, you people? And then, what do you mean, you people? It's just like it's so funny. And I'd forgotten as well how good Jack Black was in this. He's just playing a coked out comedian who just is on a junkie fix the whole time. And, when he realizes that the only time people laugh at him is when he's farting in movies, that line got me as well.
Sorry, John. I was just going to say, and this is a different character that we haven't mentioned. Is it Jay Baruchel or Baruchel?
Baruchel, yeah.
He shows up as a supporting actor in a lot of movies.
He is a part of like the Rogan extended universe. Mm-hmm. His character is also very funny because he is the audience's avatar, where he is the most normal of all of the characters. And Kent, I would say, again, of its time, the part that maybe made me laugh the hardest when I rewatched this in January, his breakdown of HD DVD versus Blu-ray.
While they're walking through the jungle.
And then Robert Downey's like, "You've been talking to me the whole time." It's so funny. And also, like, he nails it too. Like, it's, and also it reminded me of being a dork in 2008 that wanted Blu-ray to win, because I liked that I had a PS3, so thus I had Blu-ray. And I was like, I hope that Blu-ray wins, because I was that type of nerd. Yeah. That character is very, like, all the characters, it's a very memorable movie.
Well, I think you're a point you hit there was a lot of the satire or the bite comes in these odd little, like that discussion he was talking about. And then elsewhere in the movie, they talk about the budget and this and that and jab it that way, just with the dialogue, right? And it's just quick and gone.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think needs to kind of be pointed out here is this is a Ben Stiller production, right?
Yeah.
Stars. And so give him some credit for this, because he's also sticking it to his pals and to the hand that feeds him, and pulled it off box office wise. And, that's a rarity.
Yeah, he directed it. He co-wrote it. He produced it. I mean, yeah, and of course he's the main star in it too. So, and sometimes, I mean, are there other examples, Kent, of someone who's, I guess we'll call it, running the gauntlet, where it's pulled off as well as this was?
Well, not quite to the extent of directing, but everything else, Sylvester Stallone,
right,
done it multiple times with Rocky.
Yeah,
and Rambo.
but he never directed it. I mean, he directed it as well, and I didn't realize that until I saw the credits.
Yeah, that would be the one that popped to mind, probably because we're sitting here talking about war movies, and about a third of this movie or more makes fun of Rambo. That's that's who the Ben Stiller character is. Rambo, basically, is Stallone as Rambo.
That scene after the director gets blown up and they're hanging out, and so you have these drug dealers and they're actually shooting them, but then the Danny McBride character, another person we haven't mentioned yet, had loaded up the forest with C4, and so they're doing their thing with the fake guns, and meanwhile what's his name's drinking booty sweat. Like, that whole scene is so funny, because it's a really good takedown.
I mean, when the producer gets blown, or the director gets blown up, and Ben Stiller's like, "Oh no, this is fake. See, it's all corn syrup." And I'm just
blood flavored corn syrup.
Yeah, the only disappointment there is that Steve Coogan, who played the director, is hilarious for one thing.
Right.
And I felt like watching it this time that they could have kept him alive a little longer.
Yeah, sure.
He dies pretty early.
And blown him up a little later, and still had more fun with it, with him being this deluded idiot that is in over his head trying to make a movie.
Yeah, how about the line from the Access Hollywood where it was like they're a month behind schedule, 5 days to shoot
or whatever.
Like, that is a hilarious line.
They spent a ton of money on this. They made the real war movie. Like, I mean, we're talking tens of millions. This is not some slapdash effort. And once again, like last week, 2008 was before computers took everything over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that, like, making fun of the Stiller character, it comes at like such an interesting time, because 2008, I believe, is also when Iron Man came out. So like Robert Downey Jr. is on the comeback tour. And then superhero movies are about to take over everything, know? So it comes like at the perfect time, I think, to make a movie like this.
And because the end of those war movies was about upon us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
That's true. That's true. Nick, you've been quiet.
Yeah, I mean, I've been letting you guys have this discussion, but I've been trying to figure out my thoughts on this movie, because I watched it last night, and like I said, I'd seen it when I was probably, 12, 13. And it's interesting in that I think this came out at a time where I was of the age where me and a lot of my friends who would watch this movie, they were quoting, like, basically the parts where the R word was used, because that's unfortunately what you would do as a teenager in 2008.
Sure.
And they would quote that because they thought that was funny, but all of the satire, what they were making fun of, basically went over everybody's head.
Sure.
So, like, I didn't care about any of the Hollywood drama, Access Hollywood stuff.
Yeah.
I recognized it was happening, but the most I got out of it is like, oh yeah, these guys think that they're shooting a war movie, and they're not. That's whatever. Watching it as an adult, it's the first time I could finally understand what the satire aspect was. And there were some, like, lines here or there that were pretty funny, like the Access Hollywood, like, 5 days, or the budget thing. That really got me.
Mm-hmm.
But the HD DVD thing, like, I wasn't alive during that whole thing, so I didn't care. It went from DVD to Blu-ray for me. That's all I know. I like the concept. Conceptually, I think it's a really good concept, but not a whole lot of it really landed for me. Like, I see the humor. I get what the humor is, but for me, it just didn't really do much.
Really?
Yeah, and I don't know why. I've been trying to figure out why that is. Because I'm not like... I'm not mad at the whole, like, I understand the method acting blackface thing. Like, they knew what they were doing. Like, they weren't doing that in a malicious way. It was weird that they were kind of playing it up for jokes, but I know that they were self-aware about it. But at the same time, a lot of the humor, I guess, because this was kind of like the last ride of, like, the whole juvenile kind of comedy right before the superhero movies started to take over, so we didn't really get comedies like this very often after this movie came out. What this movie ended up doing for me, though, was making me more nostalgic about 2008.
Like
because
the comedies or just the
year,
literal time?
The literal time, 2008, because I was 11. I didn't have to worry about anything but playing video games and watching TV and stuff. And so that's the weird part. This movie is so 2008 coded that it just made me nostalgic for 2008 itself, but not, I didn't have any real ties or connection to the movie.
See, for me, I don't know about you, Kent or John, it made me nostalgic for comedies of this era.
Yes.
You know? And I was, I'm obviously younger than both of you are, and I'm older than Nick, but, to think of, like, I think it kind of starts with, like, I don't know, old school, but especially like Anchorman and Superbad and Knocked Up and this and Pineapple Express, like basically all those Rogen movies. I was, there's a podcast I listened to where they describe it as like having season tickets. And that's how I was. Seth Rogen has a new movie. I'm going to the theater and I'm going to be there on opening night. And that's how I was for all of these movies of that era. And it just made me think, man, we had it great with comedies because, again, with the superhero boom that was about to happen, you had to make so much money to warrant being made. And
Correct.
And comedies aren't going to make $300 or $400 or $500 million for the most part.
I think you're kind of in the sweet spot for this style or type of movie too. Like if I would have been 13 or 14 when this movie came out, I bet I would have loved this movie forever. But I think I was just young enough to where I just didn't.
Because, you were 11?
I was 11.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I was either 19 or 20. I mean,
Yeah.
It's like, talk about the perfect age to see a movie like this.
Mm-hmm.
I did not realize this until I did some research, but the Tom Cruise character was not in the script. He wanted Tom Cruise in the movie, but Cruise was going to play the McConaughey character, the agent. But then Tom Cruise said, "Well, we need a studio exec, and I think I could do this." And so they wrote his part in for that, and I'm trying to think of how this movie would be without that character, because you needed that. You needed the smarmy studio executive, and I thought he that character to me was probably top 3 favorite characters in this movie, because obviously he's just completely unhinged, totally irrational.
When he tells the grip to punch the director.
Exactly. and it's just like it was one of my favorite parts of the film, because originally, when I remembered back the first time I saw it, it was like he was just, it was just a cameo. No, I mean, he's
in it a lot.
He's in the whole damn thing, and he pretty much ties the whole thing together. And the fact that they wrote that in and Tom Cruise said, "No, I think we should do it this way," I think made the movie better.
Yeah, yes, and it's interesting to when you talk about Tom Cruise in this movie. This came in the middle of one of his runs at being both an action star and a serious actor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he had just done 2006 Mission Impossible. Then 2007, he did this movie that nobody saw called Lions for Lambs. And it's
I don't remember that one.
It's a military drama about, or not really even military. It's about people got killed in Afghanistan and there's an investigation of it. And he plays a U.S. Senator. And he was actually quite good. It's a good movie. Nobody saw it. Then comes this thing. Then comes Valkyrie. Didn't we watch that?
We did that recently. Yeah,
we did that a couple months ago.
Yeah, I mean, that's what a combination of movies if you think about it, right?
Yes, it is.
And so he was in that era in his career, because after that, maybe 2 years after that, pretty much everything he's done since then has either been Jack Reacher or Mission Impossible and the Top Gun remake, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he wouldn't do this type of role today, where it's, wearing a fat suit, looking like he does. Like, that's not that he has leaned so far away from this into just being the action guy, and he's been that way for a decade or so.
Yes, and so I found that's one of the things that I thought of watching it again this time, was how these guys have where they were in their career compared to where they are now, right? And what this movie might have or might not have done for them, right? And John mentioned, what came right after this, or not right after, but shortly thereafter with this, was Iron Man.
Yeah.
For Downey. Well, I guess he'd already done the first one. So the second Iron Man, and then away we go, with Sherlock Holmes, the Avengers. So this was right in the middle of Robert Downey's big zoom, So it's just interesting where it comes in their career. Jack White was kind of at the beginning of his run, and so was Matthew McConaughey in a sense. McConaughey a little farther along, but
yeah,
right. Ken, I'm curious. Obviously, this is a jab at the ribs of the Hollywood industry. There were a lot of cameos. Tobey Maguire, Martin Lawrence, Jason Bateman.
So
there were a lot of different cameos, and I'm curious, Kent, because everybody knows they're in on the joke. Can a movie like this be made today, skewering the Hollywood industry? Are there enough actors out there that would be like, oh yeah, this might be kind of fun?
Absolutely.
Is the climate ripe for that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. The key is to get somebody that can get them to do it. The reason I am sure that a lot of these people did this movie is they're friends with Stiller.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I would say this too, Ken, and I know that I mentioned this when it premiered. And John, I think you have Apple TV, but it's not a movie, but the studio, which is a Seth Rogen. Yeah, they have been. It's about a studio executive of a fictional studio, and they're 9 episodes in on a 10-episode season, and there have been. What was the movie, Kent, from a couple of years ago, like Don't Worry, Darling, or whatever, where there was all these behind-the-scenes stories about the director? The director of that movie is on the show and like basically poking fun at how she handled that by
her own movie. Yeah.
Yes. And so I think it can be done. I think Kent hit on it. With this one, it was Stiller. With the TV show, it's Rogen. If you trust the person in charge, I think that you're willing to maybe make fun of a fictionalized version of yourself.
They already renewed that series.
Yes. There was an episode with Ron Howard, and it was about a movie that he was making that was basically just crapping all over Ron Howard the whole time. Mm-hmm. It was very funny.
That is one of the jokes that I did like, was at the beginning of the movie, they did the fake trailers. And all I could think about is, I bet this movie would have been incredible to see in a theater.
One of the fake ones?
Just for that.
Yes,
you're sitting down,
incredible.
You see the real trailers, and then you think another trailer starting, and then you're like, hold on.
Yeah.
And then also the trailer where was that Robert Downey Jr. movie?
Mm-hmm.
The
Satan's
Lazarus.
Alley.
Yeah, but then it's like, and Tobey Maguire. Like the fact that they
MTV Best Kiss Award winner.
Uh-huh. That did actually kill me. The fact that they just used actual Tobey Maguire.
Yeah.
I love Tobey.
Well, I always love too. The first trailer is the Tug Speedman movie, and when it says at the very end, he says, "Here we go again." I have always loved that line for almost 20 years.
I think that's a really good device, too, because you show all the trailers like the Booty Sweat and the Tug Speedman thing.
Yeah.
It's a really good way to introduce the characters.
You learn a lot about them in 5 minutes.
Exactly. I thought that was really good.
That's really smart.
Well, that's what they did in the Grindhouse movies. Remember the Grindhouse, Kent, when they did the fake trailers, and then it eventually turned into Machete.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they actually made the movie out of the trailer, the fake trailer.
After this one, that movie was made after this one. The Grindhouse movie, wasn't it?
I actually think it might have been the year before. I think it might have
I
been
think it
07.
was 06 or 7.
Oh, okay. All
Because
right.
Kevin and I saw it in Wichita, and he was still doing Creighton baseball with me, and I think that was 06 or 07.
Okay. I
Machete-
thought it would have been a little later. Anyway, the one of the things that here's an ancient story. Watching that in the screening room, we had no idea those trailers were on there. And in the screening room, you never see trailers, right? All you see is the movie, right? Because they don't have it built up for the for the theatrical exhibition, right? The trailers get tacked on to the movie at the theater, right? And so when they'd send in those days, they were sending in film. When they'd send in the film, they didn't send in the trailers with it. So the movies always started with the movie. And this comes up and it's like, what are these trailers doing on this? Oh, I get it.
That's
It
awesome.
was really funny.
Well, if you want to catch it, it's on Paramount Plus, Tropic Thunder.